Okay, let's unpack this. Because sometimes the most fascinating insights, well, they don't come neatly packaged in one predictable place.
That's true.
Today's deep dive is a perfect example, pulling threads from the lunar surface, the sky above, the ground beneath our feet, and yeah, even a peculiar sighting right here on Earth in New Jersey.
It's certainly a collection of quite disparate claims and reports, all
Mhm.
presented together in one source.
Exactly. Our source material for this deep dive is basically an audio report that's compiled just a wild mix of intriguing reports and discoveries, all shared by one individual.
Okay.
We're talking potential structures on the moon, unexplained aerial phenomena interacting with aircraft, some strange vehicles,
hmm
a newly confirmed massive underground ocean, and even the latest on planetary defense against asteroids. It's a lot.
It's a good illustration of how information, whether it's actual scientific findings or maybe more anecdotal sightings, gets shared and interpreted across different online spaces.
That's it. The source draws from viewers, other online channels, scientific journals, news reports. So, our mission is to go through each of these claims as presented in the source, explore the details they provided, and try to understand just what is being reported on these wildly different subjects.
All right. Where do we start?
Let's jump in. We kind of have to start with what is maybe the most visually striking claim presented in the source: a giant glass dome supposedly found on the moon.
Ah, the lunar dome claim.
Specifically the backside of the moon, the side we don't typically see.
And the source does highlight the idea that this is where one might expect to find bases or structures, referencing um, mentions of strange activity there.
Right, and the presenter in the source, they call this an exclusive find.
Oh,
Something they claim has never seen before, but researchers in this context. The original attribution given is a YouTube channel called Weiderman 1953.
hmm.
So, what strikes you first about a claim like a giant glass dome presented in this way?
Well, immediately, the nature of the source itself and that claim of being an exclusive find, it suggests this is probably outside the realm of peer-reviewed scientific discovery.
Right, not coming from NASA directly or ESA or anything.
Exactly. Claims of massive artificial structures on, well, anywhere off Earth, they require extraordinary
Yeah.
evidence. And that typically comes from high-resolution, independently verifiable data, often from multiple missions or telescopes.
Understood. But let's look at the description from the source, what they say they're seeing. They describe the object in the image as large, white-colored, shiny,
Glass-like, I think they said.
yeah, glass-like material sticking up from the surface. It has
Yeah.
a perfect domed, smooth, round surface. You mentioned glass-like. What specific features did the source point to that led them to that conclusion?
Well, the source notes it's shiny and reflects sunlight, which gives it that appearance.
Okay.
They describe seeing darker structures inside, potentially sport beams, likened to maybe a cross or a T-shape or a plus shape.
Mm.
They even show a contrast-enhanced version and claim this might be the best shot to date of one of these lunar domes.
So the focus is heavily on the visual interpretation of the image itself, the way it looks.
Exactly. And they compare it to other supposed domes shown in the source, like one inside a crater that's also described as shiny, glass-like, sunlight glinting off it.
Huh.
And you can supposedly see through it to a similar inside structure. Another is claimed to have been captured in the dark background during an Apollo mission photo.
So they're building a kind of visual case, finding similar shapes.
It builds a case based on pattern recognition across multiple images presented in the source. Yeah.
And they bring in what they see as supporting evidence. NASA testimony from image techs who supposedly admitted to airbrushing and blurring objects out of photos.
The image tampering claim.
Yeah, they show an example they believe illustrates a massive structure on a crater rim that looks kind of blurred or smudged, but they claim some detail is still visible if you look close.
Claims of image manipulation are, well, they're pretty common in discussions of alleged anomalous objects in official space agency photos.
Right.
However, official image processing is often done for specific scientific purposes, like correcting lighting or maybe stitching images together. Interpreting blurred areas as intentional cover-ups of huge structures. That's a significant leap.
It means more than just pointing to a smudge.
Exactly. It requires more than that.
They also mention images mysteriously disappearing, getting a 404 not found message, and they encourage people listening to download the image quickly before it vanishes.
Which adds to a narrative of suppressed information, right?
Yeah.
That often accompanies these types of claims.
So what's the takeaway for you, for the listener here?
I think what's important for you to consider here is that while the source presents striking images and, yeah, compelling narratives about hidden structures and potential cover-ups, evaluating such claims scientifically requires access to the original high-resolution data. You need to understand the image provenance, where it came from, how it was processed, and consider all possible natural explanations first.
Before jumping to artificial structure.
Right. Natural geological formations, lighting effects, even image artifacts that can sometimes resemble structured objects, especially in lower resolution or older imagery.
Okay. So from supposed artificial structures way out on the moon, let's come back down to Earth, but still look up at unexplained phenomena interacting with our aircraft.
Ah, yes, the report from Hollister, California. That one.
Exactly. The source features footage captured over Hollister, California, apparently during a barbecue by Alonzo Padilla and friends.
Okay.
They saw a large commercial plane overhead and then noticed a smaller, round, dark object flying above it at a very close speed. The source really emphasizes the speed and proximity.
And proximity to a commercial airliner like that.
Yeah.
That would certainly be unusual for conventional air traffic,
Yep.
safety regulations.
Right. The source speculated that you might see a thrust of some sort coming off the back of the smaller object, though they do admit it could just be sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
Their crucial point is there was nothing indicating it was another conventional craft, and they question if another plane would even be allowed to fly so close. How do you think we should approach evaluating a sighting like this? Captured on a cell phone,
Well, cell phone footage, it can capture real events, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it can also be subject to various factors, like camera shake, focus issues, lens artifacts, and just misidentification of known objects at unusual angles or distances. Things like drones, balloons, even birds can look strange, depending on the recording quality and the observer's perspective.
So you'd want to rule out the common stuff first.
Exactly. Analyzing such footage often requires ruling out those more common explanations first.
And the source broadens this out, referencing past incidents of UFOs following or shadowing planes. They list specific examples.
Like the Air Force One pilot.
Yeah, President Obama's former pilot of Air Force One encountering a glowing disc. Then disc-shaped objects near a plane over Canberra, Australia, attributed to finding UFO.
Okay.
And UFO sightings with military planes referencing Foo Fighters from World War II.
These historical references place the current sighting within sort of a longer tradition of unexplained aerial reports involving aircraft.
Right.
The term Foo Fighters from WWII, for instance, referred to various unexplained aerial phenomena observed by pilots, often attributed to maybe scout ships or psychological warfare by the enemy at the time, but never really conclusively identified.
Interesting. The source goes into more detail on two specific incidents at Edwards Air Force Base. First, there's a famous image from 1954.
Ah, the B-57 photo.
Yeah, of a flying disc apparently shadowing a military jet, photographed by professional photographers from Martin Aircraft Company, which later became Lockheed Martin.
Right.
During a promotional shot of their B-57 camera bomber, the photo was apparently later leaked.
That 1954 photo is indeed well known in UFO history circles. However, the context around it, including claims it was a promotional shot that accidentally captured something, and the way it was later spread around as leaked, it complicates its interpretation. Different analyses over the years have proposed various explanations. Could be atmospheric phenomena, could even be the photo itself is misinterpreted or altered, although that last part is debated.
So ambiguous.
It highlights how photographic evidence from that era can be ambiguous and open to multiple interpretations decades later.
Then there's the 1965 incident, also at Edwards AFB, October 7th. Up to 12 UFOs were spotted by military personnel and fighter jets were scrambled.
Okay, that sounds more involved.
Yeah, the source claims this took place over a 5-hour period, documented with at least 40 hours of communications audio recording.
A 5-hour incident with multiple sightings and an official response.
Yeah.
It's certainly significant if it's documented.
Right, and the source mentions about 6 hours were declassified and released, while over 30 more hours are still classified.
Interesting. So there's potentially more information still held back.
Yes, and they provide snippets from the audio transcription. Reports of red light and green light combination moving very rapidly, checking with RAPCON.
Radar approach control, right.
Yeah, the unit managing aircraft around the base, talk of quite an invasion, sightings over Victorville and Edwards looking for about 7 UFOs, and descriptions like 4 of them, 3 on the bottom side, 2 up, 2 in a line, and then there's 3 in a line.
The audio transcripts, or at least these descriptions from the source, they paint a picture of real-time observations and likely confusion among personnel.
Mm-hmm.
What stands out here is the apparent scale and duration of the event, as reported by the military. While declassified documents and audio provide valuable historical context, interpreting them requires understanding the procedures and terminology used back then, and maybe the stress of the situation.
And considering the stress of an unexpected event, absolutely. Finally, on this topic, they mentioned the Concord UFO incident, showing old footage where a white orb appears next to the plane, a reflection is visible, and then it just darts off.
Yeah, like the Hollister footage, older footage from sources like this can be really challenging to analyze definitively. Resolution, focus issues, the potential for artifacts or common objects just appearing anomalous.
So the source's overall conclusion from all these examples, following planes, the Edwards incidents, Concord, is that, quote, visitors here who are not only studying us, but they are studying our aircraft.
Okay, so that's the big leap.
Yeah. Following, probing, sometimes being caught or even down, and they mention Roswell as an example of that.
So this interprets a really wide range of unexplained aerial sightings, historical and contemporary, as evidence of a consistent non-human presence that's actively engaged with human technology.
Yeah.
The insight here is recognizing that while the source provides details from various reports and documents, the conclusion about visitors, that's an interpretation that goes beyond the documented observations themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Each historical case, from the Foo Fighters to Edwards AFB to Roswell, has its own really complex history of investigation and debate, often with multiple proposed explanations ranging from misidentification to classified conventional projects.
Okay. So that covers the strange sightings interacting with technology in our skies and even potentially near the moon.
Mm.
But the source also included sightings of a different, much more terrestrial kind. Let's talk about the zombie patrol car.
Slight pause, right? That's quite a shift in focus, isn't it?
It really is. So the source was apparently emailed pictures of what's being called a zombie patrol car,
Okay.
sighted in Belleville, New Jersey on September 13th, parked in front of a family dollar store.
Belleville, New Jersey. Got it.
The pictures show an emblem on the side with a biohazard symbol, some writing towards the back that was hard to make out, and writing on the front that the source states said zombie patrol or something similar.
And the source noted it looked professionally done.
Yes, exactly. And they compare it to another similar vehicle spotted previously, a much more fortified, heavily armored zombie patrol vehicle seen down in Dallas, Texas.
Okay, so there's more than one, apparently. Or at least claimed to be.
Seems like it, according to the source.
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, well, as you noted, it's pretty different from the previous topics.
Yeah, very different.
Indeed. The source's response was a direct call to action for listeners in Belleville, New Jersey, asking for more information or if there's a, quote, possible coming zombie apocalypse.
Slight pause. Okay.
What does including something like this tell us about the kind of information presented in this source overall?
Well, it really highlights that the source compiles reports ranging from potential scientific discoveries and historical mysteries to purely anecdotal, unexplained local oddities.
Like this car.
Right. The zombie patrol car sighting, as presented, it just lacks context. It could be a promotional vehicle for a movie or a game.
Or just someone's art project car.
Or a piece of thematic art or something else entirely. The insight here is recognizing the vast difference in verifiability and significance between a local photo sighting like this and, say, a scientific paper published in Nature, which they also discuss.
Right, okay. That's a good point. Shifting from these unusual sightings, let's turn to something grounded in scientific research that was discussed in the source. Evidence of a massive secret ocean deep below Earth's surface.
Ah, yes. This is a genuinely fascinating area of geoscience research that has indeed seen significant findings in recent years.
The source mentions its depth and size, 400 to 660 kilometers below the surface, between the upper and lower mantle layers.
That's the transition zone, yeah.
And the volume claimed is just astounding, enough water to cover the surface of the Earth 3 times. 3 times the volume of our surface oceans. Is that accurate?
That volume is actually consistent with estimates in scientific discussions about the amount of water that can be stored within minerals in the transition zone of the Earth's mantle.
Stored within minerals, okay.
Yes, that's key.
The source attributes this research to a joint effort between researchers and geophysical scientists from the US and Canada. They mention looking at data from hundreds of different seismometers throughout the US and the world, finding very strange readings as well as audio frequencies.
Seismology is indeed the primary tool we use to study Earth's deep interior.
Right.
By analyzing how seismic waves from earthquakes travel through the Earth, scientists can infer the composition, the temperature, and even the presence of water within deep rock structures. Changes in wave speed can indicate areas where minerals hold water.
Fascinating. The source cites the journal Nature and details a specific discovery reported there, finding a small, water-rich diamond.
Ah, the ringwoodite discovery.
That later on proved a vast water reservoir exists beneath the Earth's mantle.
That diamond is a crucial piece of direct evidence. These rare diamonds, they form very deep within the Earth, and sometimes they trap tiny inclusions of minerals from the mantle.
Like little time capsules.
Exactly. Finding minerals like ringwoodite within these diamonds that contain hydrogen, which indicates water, provides a physical sample from these extreme depths. It corroborates the seismic evidence.
They even include a quote from the lead author, Graham Pearson from the University of Alberta. He stated the discovery provides extremely strong confirmations that there are vast wet spots deep inside the Earth. One reason why the Earth is a dynamic planet is the presence of water inside. The water changes depending on the way the world works.
And that quote accurately reflects the scientific understanding. Water, even in relatively small amounts locked within the crystal structure of mantle minerals, it significantly affects the physical properties of the rock. It influences processes like melting point, viscosity, essentially the movement of material in the mantle, which is what drives plate tectonics.
Ah, okay.
But the key takeaway here, and this is important, is that this is not a liquid ocean you could swim in.
Right, not like Finding Nemo down there.
Exactly. It's water chemically bound within the rock structure itself under immense pressure and temperature.
Got it. The source also speculates about filtering. Possible filtering between this underground ocean and our surface oceans, with water going down and new water coming up.
Well, while there is a deep water cycle within the Earth, involving water being carried down by subducting tectonic plates and potentially released through volcanism over geological timescales, the concept of direct continuous filtering or rapid exchange between this deep mantle reservoir and the surface oceans isn't really how the scientific consensus describes it. It's a much slower, more complex geological process.
Okay. And then the source takes kind of an eerie turn, speculating about what kind of creatures might be in this deep ocean. And tangents about how little we know about our own oceans, only 10% known, 90% unexplored, discovering new things all the time, witnessing strange activity.
Right. This highlights the jump from a scientific finding about water held in minerals to speculative scenarios about life in a literal deep Earth ocean.
Which isn't what the science says.
The scientific discovery is about water in the mineral structure of mantle rock, not vast caverns filled with liquid water that could support life as we know it. The speculation about creatures, it draws parallels to the mysteries of our surface oceans, sure, but applies them to a context that the scientific evidence just doesn't support.
So the insight here is separating the finding from the fantasy.
Distinguishing between a verifiable scientific discovery and imaginative speculation, absolutely.
Okay. Finally, from the depths of the Earth, the source brings up Earth's vulnerability to asteroid strikes.
A very real concern, given Earth's history, yeah.
They attribute statements to a NASA spokesman at Goddard Space Flight Center and also the White House science chief under President Barack Obama, John Holdren. They include a direct quote from John Holdren. "We are not fully prepared, but we are on a trajectory to get much more."
That quote is from some time ago now, but it accurately reflects the ongoing state of planetary defense efforts. It's a continuous process, Detection, tracking, developing potential response strategies. We're always working on getting better prepared.
The source discusses a specific tool called ARM, the Asteroid Redirect Mission.
Right, ARM.
The plan presented is for NASA to launch a robotic probe in late 2021 toward a near-Earth asteroid, targeting 2008 EV5, described as 1,300 feet wide.
Okay.
And the source explains what the probe would do. Pluck a boulder off the surface, then fly along with the asteroid using a deflection strategy called enhanced gravity tractor.
A gravity tractor concept.
To nudge it off course over years and decades.
It's worth noting here that while the asteroid redirect mission concept was studied and discussed, including that gravity tractor idea, the full mission plan, as described here, particularly the part about sending astronauts for sample return and placing it in lunar orbit, ultimately did not proceed in that specific form.
Okay, so that mission didn't happen exactly like that.
Not exactly, no. However, the underlying goals, asteroid characterization, developing deflection techniques like the gravity tractor, which uses a spacecraft's own mass to subtly pull an asteroid over time, those remain very active areas of research and mission planning. Think of NASA's recent DART mission, for example.
Right, the one that hit the asteroid.
Exactly, testing a kinetic impactor deflection method.
The source expresses relief that NASA is finally taking this topic seriously, and also concern about only being able to monitor a certain amount of our sky and talk of a potential asteroid hit in the next 20 years or so.
Well, the concern about monitoring is valid. While we've made significant progress in finding and tracking the larger near-Earth objects, especially those big enough to cause global devastation, detecting smaller objects, like the one that impacted over Chelyabinsk, Russia, back in 2013, that's still challenging, often with limited lead time.
And the next 20 years thing.
That's likely referring to statistical possibilities for an impact of a certain size, not a prediction for a specific known object heading our way right now.
Okay, that's clear. They emphasize that it doesn't take a large asteroid or a meteor to cause significant damage and provide past impact examples, like a new meteor excavated in Argentina, weighing about 68,000 pounds, estimated to have fallen about 4,000 years ago, made mainly of iron and nickel.
That's a substantial fragment. It shows that even objects that mostly break up in the atmosphere can leave large remnants behind that are still significant.
And then the classic example, Barringer Crater in Arizona.
Meteor crater, yeah.
Created about 50,000 years ago by a meteorite, only about 50 meters across. It's like 160 feet.
Relatively small, geologically speaking.
Right. But moving at about 20 kilometers with an impact energy of around 10 megatons, causing a crater nearly 1,200 meters in diameter and 170 meters deep.
The Barringer crater is just a powerful demonstration that even these relatively modest-sized objects can release tremendous energy upon impact, enough to cause significant localized destruction.
So the insight here
is understanding that planetary defense involves detecting both the civilization-threatening large objects and the more frequent, smaller objects that can still cause substantial regional damage. And our ability to respond really depends on early detection, which is why monitoring the sky remains so critical.
So we've covered an incredible range today, all pulled from this single source. Claims of giant glass domes on the moon. Unexplained objects shadowing aircraft with some interesting historical context.
Right.
A bizarre zombie patrol car sighting.
Can't forget that one.
The scientific discovery of a massive underground water reservoir locked in minerals. And the very real ongoing efforts to defend our planet from asteroids.
It's a prime illustration of how readily available information from wildly diverse sources can blend, actual scientific reports, historical accounts, purely anecdotal sightings, and quite a bit of speculative theory.
Exactly. Exploring sources like this, well, it offers you a quick way to gain perspective on the sheer variety of information and claims circulating out there.
Yeah.
It gives you nuggets of knowledge, whether it's the scientific significance of water in the mantle for Earth's dynamism or the historical details of alleged UFO incidents at places like Edwards, while also highlighting just how much is still unknown or debated about our planet and the cosmos.
And it really underscores the crucial need for you, the listener, to evaluate each piece of information based on the evidence provided, the source it comes from, and understanding the difference between, say, a testable scientific hypothesis and an unsubstantiated claim, or maybe just an interesting interpretation.
Absolutely. So what does it say about our understanding of the universe and even our own home that we can delve into detailed scientific papers about hidden water deep within the Earth, while at the same time considering claims about structures on the moon and unidentified objects in our skies, or even a weird car in New Jersey? What stands out to you from this deep dive?